with churchfront.com. It's Friday afternoon, and I'm hopping on YouTube Live to do a Q&A on any worship leading and or church tech questions that you may have. And while we are waiting for folks to hop on to the live video, I'm just going to share a few things to make sure that you know about. Number one, have you enrolled in my free training, Lead Worship with Ableton yet? I've included the link in the description of this video, so preferably after you watch this video, make sure you sign up for that free training. It's 4 videos about Ableton Live, so if you're new to it, it's really great for you. If you're not that new to Ableton, there's probably not a whole lot of new information there, but it's really for like beginners getting to know Ableton and how to use it in the worship context. So make sure you click the link below to enroll in that. Also, if you need some free ambient pads for worship to play underneath your band to help fill in transitions, go to churchfrontpads.com. So a couple freebies I wanted you guys to know about. Also wanted you to be aware of the videos that I published this week. The first one was on tips for finding a worship leader job. So if you're looking for a paid gig as a worship leader, I'm part-time. I get paid to do it. It's really nice. And if you guys want to find those opportunities yourself, that video is all about the resources that'll help you find those. So let me know, as you log in, where first question. I'm going to ask you guys a lot of questions today. You ask me questions. Let me know where you're from. So what's up, Jose? Thanks for saying hi from Uruguay. That's awesome. Let me know, guys, where you are watching from. And then let me know. You can go right at it with any questions that you have about worship ministry, anything that you've seen on my channel. All right, so Jonathan from Michigan, what's up? Andrew from British Columbia, Burnaby. Let's see. And then we got a question here from Juan Pablo. Let's see. It's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Boston, Germany, Chicagoland, Mexico. All right, so you asked about parts and instruments. It's just not that organized. Any tips? So yeah, let me go back to your comment there, Juan Pablo. We're a church plan, the really divine worship leader, somewhat worship team overseer who runs sound. Yeah, so I think it's important for you to have a band leader for any worship team, someone who's not only overseeing someone, you have someone overseeing sound, but I think it's also important to have someone who is overseeing just the musical aspects of your worship team. So who's picking the songs, picking the keys of songs, providing charts for songs, sending other practice material for the band. And maybe that needs to be you to take the leadership for that. Because I think sometimes when there's no leader, people kind of just put up with the disorganization. But then when someone steps up to do it, they can make it happen. So that's what I would recommend in that scenario if you feel like it's disorganized. Let's see here. Grant asked, hey, I warp my songs in Ableton. When I crossfade them to the next song, both songs play one master tempo. Any ideas? Okay. So I'm trying to picture that. I actually have Ableton Live on my computer here. I had it pulled up earlier. I was working on my session. So maybe if you could unpack a little bit more, because when I crossfade songs in Ableton Live, I will pick, I guess I don't crossfade them that much to ever run into issues with like tempo changes like that. And feel free to unpack that situation a little bit more, Grant. Unfortunately, I do not speak Spanish. My wife can speak Spanish. Elizabetta, making sure I'm pronouncing your names properly. I'm trying. I apologize for not. If you don't have drums, man, there's a couple other instruments you could use. Like if you use you could get a cajon. I guess if you, but say let's say you don't have anybody to use drums. Um, you could still use a click track if it's just you and a couple of musicians. If you just want to stay in tempo with each other, again, that's something you need in-ear monitoring for. You could get into using backing tracks as well. You can use the Prime app or Playback app or Ableton if you want to get fancy. But if you're a smaller band, maybe just try using a click track to kind of keep you and your other band members in time. Let's see. Jonathan, thanks so much for the encouragement. Appreciate that, man. Um, let's see. As part-time worship leader, how do you focus on getting your team excited about ministry outside of a Sunday morning? That's a great question, Brandon. I would say, like my team, like we're all sort of like they're all dedicated. Like they all love being there on Sunday, and they're also very talented. So it's like everybody shows up, they know their parts. Rehearsal usually goes pretty smoothly, sounds great. Um, and they're all excited about it on Sunday. I would say just the nature of the ministry right now, we're not really, I don't really, I mean, to be honest, we don't really spend a whole lot of time other than like me prepping the songs and emailing them during the week. Like, hey, here's the music for this week. Do your homework, learn it, be ready. I don't do a whole lot outside of that, but sometimes just to kind of foster community among the band, I'll take them to Starbucks. If we have time, like between rehearsal and when the service starts, it's just kind of we just hang out. Not really much of an agenda. It's just let's just be friends. I think that's what will help people be more excited about worship ministry if they feel like they actually like the people that they're serving with. And that's something I'm really grateful with about at Mission Lakewood Church. I want you guys to share too, like, what's your biggest challenge that you feel like you're facing right now in your worship ministry? Could be what how would you describe that? What your biggest challenge is right now? What do you think about dual drivers, KZ headphones for in-ear monitors? I have not tried those ones in particular. I've used dual driver headphones before. I think I used the Shure SE315. I think I have them right here. Nope, I don't have them. So right now, what happened? I'm using usually I use the Shure SE 215 or 315. I can't remember which one it is, and the cable broke on one of them. So now it's like a defective pair of headphones. And so now I'm using the super cheap earbuds that came with one of our wireless packs, and like it's pretty horrible, but it works. And I just haven't. Honestly, I need to. I want to reach out to my friend who works at All Claire, and I want to buy some from them and get some made. But I just haven't made the time to do it yet. Get some nice in-ear monitors. But as far as like that particular model, Jose, I don't really know. I can't really be the judge of that. I would just look up some reviews on YouTube. How would you prep your band to transfer from wedges to in-ears? That's a great question, Jonathan. So you don't have to do it all at once. So that's what I did when I transitioned a band from wedges to in-ears. We actually started with the drummer and myself, the worship leader, and then I think maybe the pianist. And it might have actually originally just started with myself and the drummer, because I feel like as the worship leader and the drummer, if you guys can hear like the click track, if that's the main reason you're using in-ears, like that's all you need. If you're not using click track, you just want in-ears for the sake of having in-ears, like then you really could just start, if you need to break it out over time when you spend the money to do it, you can just kind of gradually transition everyone over that way. So I would just kind of prep everybody, be like, hey, we want to start moving towards in-ears. Tell them that it's going to allow you guys to achieve a better mix in your church. Like it's going to sound better because you have a lot less stage volume. I was actually just consulting at a church in the area where they had that. They could easily implement in-ears. They don't have them yet. They have all wedges. It just creates a lot of stage volume, and then that just clutters the sound. So make sure you explain to them the benefits that not only is it going to help them, but it's going to actually help the congregation. It's going to make everybody hear what's going on better. And And then, but the other thing too, though, is it is really going to help the band members as well. They're going to hear themselves a lot better. If you want to use a click track, you're gonna be able to use a click track. So make sure you also really, really emphasize the benefits, because some folks can be like, I don't want in ears and stuff. Sometimes you're just gonna make hard decisions as a leader and just make it happen and cast vision. And sometimes part of leading is people don't necessarily see what you see and the benefits of it, but you just got to kind of charge forward and bring them along. It's a great question. What do you prefer for motion backgrounds? The style you made for church motion graphic style. So for motion backgrounds, I really, if I had a lot of time in the world, I would do more where like I would go out and like capture my own footage. Especially I'm here in Colorado, especially this time of year, it's like beautiful and green outside, and for like maybe the next month and a half, and then everything turns brown, and because it gets really hot and dry. So I'm a videographer. Like I have a camera right here. I have a get this off. I have a Panasonic GH5. This is what I shoot like all my videos on. But yeah, I do a lot of professional video work using this simple little camera and capturing footage with it. Like this is what that actually back in January I made a video about making motion backgrounds. You can see that on the YouTube channel, and that's what I use to make a lot of them. I also use my drone. So I wish like I would like to have time to go around Denver, go in the mountains, capture footage, and use that. But right now, I'm using a lot of more of the abstract motion backgrounds simply out of convenience sake. It's just quick and easy for me to load those in there. And at Church Motion Graphics, they keep coming out with a new bundle every month. So it's like just as I start getting sick of a bundle, it's like, oh, they came out with a new one. And they have, of course, they have a whole bunch of other older bundles that I use as well. So Emmanuel asks, how do you practice all the time? Because here at my church in Mexico, we learn the songs in practice time. So at the end of the week, we know only 2 or 3 songs. So in making sure like that, I would make sure that you're maybe number one, you're not like trying to introduce too many new songs all the time. I view for my band, I view it as like we have a library of songs, and like there's some songs that we just know. They're like right now, like, The Lion and the Lamb, Oh Come to the Altar, What a Beautiful Name. Basically, when you look at the CCLI like top 10 songs, like I feel like those are standards that every church could be doing. And probably they should be a regular part of your band. So I have songs that like we when we practice on Sundays, it's more like a sound check because we know the songs really well. Because again, we have a lot of consistent musicianship in our band. But then I just don't introduce new songs too frequently. Like maybe I think we're at around now that we built up our library. I think we may be doing like 2 newer songs a month. I don't really like to introduce much more than that. And then when we do a newer song, we repeat it multiple times. So hopefully that kind of helps you a little bit there, Emmanuel, with just kind of making sure you practice the songs enough. Yeah, Lucas, yes. I don't know if you have a video about it, but how do you show the chord chart to the band on stage if you do? So I do have a video about how I build chord charts in Planning Center. It's one of my first videos on this channel. Search how to prepare chord charts in MP3 files with Planning Center. It's very in-depth. I walk you through my whole process of how to do it. So I put my chord charts on Planning Center, and it's there. And then we don't print any of the music. Like I memorize the music myself. We also have a confidence monitor in the back for lyrics. So we're not putting any music on the stage during the service on the weekend. But before, I would, in church situation where we did have music stands, I printed everything out. I printed out the songbook on Planning Center because Planning Center makes it really easy. And I also like made sure I whenever I create chord charts, I like it so a chart doesn't take up more than one side of one page, and I show you how to do that in that video I mentioned. And I have it arranged so that like like I put in a 3-ring binder, hole punch it so like flipping through is really easy. And if songs are back to back and there's just a transition, I try to make it so the musicians don't actually have to flip the page. And guys, my wife's calling me real quick, and I got to take this. So pardon me real quickly. Hey, yeah, I'm doing a YouTube live. Is it something that can wait? Oh, I would love that. Cool. Uh, yeah, yeah, sounds good. Okay. It was very important. She was picking me up a coffee, so if I have to leave quickly, like 1 minute to run outside to grab it, when she gets here, I will do that. So, what I was talking about was chord charts, and I put them all in a 3-ring binder, and they're easy to navigate through. And that's how I used to do it when we printed them out and gave them to the band every week. Some people use iPad apps. So if you have like the Music Stand app that comes with Planning Center, I think you got to pay a little extra for it, a couple bucks a month. But that can be handy if everybody has their own phones or tablets. I wouldn't recommend having to read off of a phone, but maybe if you had tablets, you could go on eBay, find some really cheap used iPads, and maybe instead of printing every week, you could just have them in there and supply power to them as well. So hopefully that gives you a few more ideas there. Let's see here. Okay, so Caesar asked about tempo changes mid song in Ableton Live. And sometimes there's some songs, like you said, the one by Trading My Sorrows by Israel Houghton. Caesar, are you using are you creating a tempo clip, that then you could just like maybe create multiple tempo clips within a song that changes the tempo of Ableton depending on where you're at? Because that's something you could do. Or um, another option you could do is um, actually just use, if the multi-track comes with an audio file click track, another thing you can do is just use that and turn off, maybe you could cue to turn off the metronome in Ableton Live for that song, and then you're just going to hear the audio file track that goes along with that multi-track session. I'll be right back. I got to go grab my coffee. Sorry, I really hate to leave you guys hanging here for a second, but keep asking me questions in the comments. I'll be right back. Need this. I almost locked myself out. All right. I'm on my way back, guys. Probably one of the worst things you can do on a YouTube live is just leave everybody like that in the middle of it. Hey, but I got this coffee. Okay. These are really great questions. Let me see. Yeah, so hopefully that helps you out, Caesar, with a click track issue. So Brandon asked about, this is a good one. This is a common challenge. Sorry, I'm out of breath because I ran up and down the stairs. Helping influence the culture to love worship through music and expression, like bodily expressions. Hard to get engagement in a consumer culture. I definitely agree. Like, it's one of the it's kind of like the curse of modern worship is it definitely does. It's so much like, visually and auditory wise, like it's a really cool experience, but people kind of come and they just like think they're like at a movie theater and they're just supposed to watch. So I would say making sure, like, number one, don't be afraid to ask them, like, or don't be afraid to like invite them. I guess that's a better word to put it. So like when you get to those times in worship where you have space to kind of pastor the congregation, just be like, hey, I just want to invite you right now. Like, let's raise our hands and explain why. Like, this is a very basic, simple sign of just showing surrender to God. So, don't be afraid to just ask them and lead them in it, because sometimes people don't do stuff when they're just not led to do those types of things. So, and when I tell you this, I'm preaching to myself, because it is so much easier to just keep singing, and like people sing. Some people just naturally raise hands, but I think there's some people that they would do it if someone would just explain or just lead them into it. So that's my 2 cents there for you, Brandon. Let's see. Thank you, Cyril, for the words of encouragement from Sweden. Let's see. Michael, the worship leader doesn't like the idea of Ableton or click tracks. I'm sorry to hear that. Um, tell them to watch my free training I have on Ableton Live. Hopefully that will change their mind. LRETV, hi Jake, are you using subs for your church plant? If so, which would you say are good for a small church? Yes, we are using 18-inch Electro Voice subs. I have that in my worship leading toolkit. I think I need to put the link to that. I forgot to put the link to that in the description of this video. If you go to any of my videos that has anything to do with gear or worship leading stuff, most of the time I have a link to that toolkit. I wonder actually if you just Google worship leader toolkit. One of my articles came up there, but the toolkit itself does not come up there. So you could just go ahead and look through one of my videos, like the one I did on in-ear monitoring, or the church plant setup we have, and I'll have the exact model number for those subs. But I recommend, 2 18-inch subwoofers are they sound great, especially if you're in a room with just maybe a couple hundred people. I think that's all you need. Rusu asked, do you think a worship leader should go to college for it? I don't think it's totally necessary. Here's what I think college is really helpful for worship leaders, is if you can get like maybe the first 2 semesters of music theory and ear training and sight singing class. It's actually kind of what music majors get. Like that's really, really helpful. So even if you got like a music minor, I think that's about all you need to know as a worship leader. When I think, because I got a music major, I got a bachelor's in music, and I didn't use after like my sophomore year. I feel like I don't remember anything I learned after that, and everything I learned now on a daily basis, like musically, was from those like first 2 semesters, my first year of learning, being in college for music. So I bet you could find like maybe a community college or a local place that teaches you all those things, because that makes you so much more competent in the area of music theory and leading your band. Super helpful. And then for the biblical aspect of it, I think that's important. And the thing is, if you can be self-disciplined enough to like look up some good books to read, in the area of theology and biblical studies or worship theology, like you can learn a lot without having to go to college, for that route too. And again, like I went to seminary, which is like you get a bunch of biblical studies and theological studies classes there. And it was really helpful. Probably more helpful than I even think of or appreciate at this point. But I guess my short answer is like, no, I don't think college is for everybody, but I think learning is for everybody. Like you cannot, like in any trade, in any area of life, like you have to be a learner and be willing to find books, read them, apply them, and just keep learning more and more and more. Francisco, what's the main difference between ProPresenter and Proclaim and MIDI mapping? This is a great question, because MIDI mapping works in both, but it's a little bit clunky. I feel like a little bit more clunkier in Proclaim. Um, in Proclaim, you don't even have to use like the built-in MIDI network device, or I don't think, or maybe you do have to use the IAC driver on Mac. I'm kind of getting confused between PC and Mac right now, but the way it works in Proclaim is you go to preferences, MIDI, and then you go to the different commands in Proclaim that you want to assign, and then you just like trigger. If you could have like a, a MIDI keyboard plugged into your computer, or MIDI signals coming from Ableton, and you just trigger a MIDI note, and it will map it to that command, and it will remember it. So that to me, like, and the other thing too is it's a little bit more limited. There's a less commands you can have control of in Proclaim. Like, for example, in Proclaim, you can only tell it to be like, tell it to do the command, go to next slide, or go to previous slide, or go to song section. Whereas in ProPresenter, I can queue up a particular song with a MIDI command, and then I can also queue up the right slide number within a song. And for me, I like the idea that every slide in ProPresenter gets matched up with a MIDI cue in ProPresenter. It's really kind of hard to explain that without like doing a screen share. The short of it is, I think ProPresenter in the long run, you're gonna run into less like headaches or issues. Proclaim, you can make it work. It's just not quite as smooth as what I would prefer. What equipment do you suggest we use to control lyrics and lighting within Ableton? Jermaine asked that. So I recommend that you use, I mean, it's more like software recommendations, I guess, and gear. I recommend ProPresenter for your presentation software, even though, like I was just talking about, Proclaim can control it, but ProPresenter is way more capable in the area of, lyrics, video, any other visual elements like that go on your screen. And I think it plays well with Ableton much better than Proclaim. And then for lighting, I always recommend My DMX 3.0. It's a very affordable within the world of lighting controllers. And what it is, it's a software. It runs on your computer, but it comes with a USB dongle, USB to DMX, and you can send, the right DMX cues through the USB dongle to your lighting system. You can create scenes. It's like the way we have it set up on our computer. We just like point and click on the right scene. And then I can also automate that with Ableton Live. So I can assign the right MIDI notes to different scenes in Ableton. So actually that's what I got to do today. After I do this, I got to finish up some Ableton programming. How would you run an audition for the worship team? How do you say no to someone? I do have a video on this. I think I released it like last August, that kind of talks about my audition process. But I would say just be thorough, take your time. And you could even like have them send you a video. Like, so maybe have an online form of your website. That's where you send people who are interested in auditioning, and they fill out the form. So you get their information and tell them, hey, send me a video of you singing or playing this worship song, which in your case is like maybe a standard song that you have at your church. So that's an easy way, because it's easy for anyone to like take their phone and like put it up somewhere and record it. They could send it to you, or you could bypass that. You could have them just come meet with you. I kind of like the idea of like the video, being sent, and then afterwards you can just, let them know like, hey, like, you got potential. I need you to keep working on this, this, and this. And then, send us another video when you're ready. Or the same thing with in-person auditions. Have them come to you, tell them what songs they need to have ready. I feel like that's fair. And then, to say no nicely, but still be honest, you just tell them like, hey, like, really appreciate, where you're at, like in your willingness to want to be a part of the band and to be a part of the team. But just make sure you're honest with them. I've made the mistake of not being honest with people up front. And then they got on stage and then just did not go very well. And it was like, sorry, you can't do it. And they weren't very happy. So none of us were very happy in that situation. So always be honest and have the hard conversations first. If let's assume like someone has potential, they just need more time to develop out the skills. Try to give them specific directions on what they need to work on. If someone doesn't have the skill to be on stage as a singer or instrumentalist, then find other avenues for them to serve in worship ministry. Maybe it could be on the tech team, or maybe it could be in other parts of your church as well. Like they could be, helping with the greeting team, the parking team, this or that. Like some of those other positions that maybe they're not as excited about it, but that kind of ultimately kind of depends on their maturity to be able to serve where they're needed. So, and where their giftings work out. Let's see. Troy, okay, we're still getting our musicians used to working with a click and track and backing tracks, or click track and backtracks, and our drummer especially having issues with it. As a tech, it's frustrating when they keep stopping Ableton part way through the song because I feel like I can't reliably automate anything else. Any suggestions? Yeah, man, that is like, I can see how that's challenging for you, especially because like you're not the one controlling the musical aspect of the band and what's going on. It's like, come on, guys, just like play through the song. So all this other automation stuff works out perfectly. In that situation, I mean, I guess in a sense, like you sort of have to be patient with the band being able to musically get the act together to be able to play with the clicking tracks, and then it's worth your time to start going and automating, or like you could even build out your automations, but maybe not use them if it's not working out, as smoothly as planned. Troy, okay, Jake, send your musical rejects to the tech team. Of course, dude, send them your way. But yeah, Troy, I don't know. That's tough. I don't really have like a particularly like I don't super helpful answer for that one. I think hopefully over time your team can just the worship team can just get used to the click and tracks stuff. And I guess I'd be interested in too, like when you say they have to stop halfway through a song. I mean, theoretically, you could still continue the automation process, right? Like if I stopped halfway through a song and I went back to the beginning, like it would just queue up the right lyrics and Pro Presenter and the right lighting cues and all that stuff. So, yeah, you can unpack that for me a little bit more too, if you kind of describe what exactly that issue looks like. Unstoppable. Any recommendation with teach congregation about worship? Like what is worship or what is the goal? Here's a little tidbit that I found helpful when I kind of tried to describe worship to the congregation. And I mean, I think there's a lot of directions you can go with it. So finding good books about it, like Worship Matters by Bob Coughlin, The Worship Pastor by Zach Hicks. Definitely check out those books. And any other books, Desiring the Kingdom by James K.A. Smith. That one's a little bit more heady theological, but it's still pretty practical. That's actually the one that I like pulled from though most of the time. And what I tell the congregation, the reason we're there, one of the reasons we're there for worship, I mean, because I feel like there's multiple reasons, is like we want to, the human heart is a very fickle thing, and it ends up desiring multiple different things, like the things of this world, right? Like we want, comfort, we want money, we want power, reputation, just like the worldly things. But worship kind of reminds us that for us to live life to our fullest and to the healthiest way that God designed it, like we need to love him most. That's where our heart needs to be pointed and aiming towards. Our desires need to be pointed towards him. So that's something I'll remind the congregation of, like why we're there. It's like to basically kind of, our hearts are kind of going astray, going this way and that way, and like we're there in worship to like re-aim them towards God. So that's just one thing. Like I just shared that like a week or two ago. I can't even remember. Another thing too is like just maybe picking a call to worship reading, which is, you could pick a reading from the Psalms where Psalm 96 or Psalm 103. Like these songs that are kind of just like saying like, bless the Lord. Let's sing to him. Let's worship him. Kind of like you can use scripture to help people kind of call people to worship. But then also like some of those scripture verses actually kind of tell us like, okay, we're going to worship God because he's done this, this, and this, and this. So hopefully those ideas kind of help you out there. Unstoppable. Emmanuel, how do you say to someone on team to stop singing because they're not good at it? um, I would, again, it's I don't know if I don't think there's easy ways to do it. I think you have to do it in the most loving way possible. I think first, does that person have the potential to develop out the skill to sing? Like, and how could you just encourage them to like work on it? How could you point them towards good resources, like maybe Worship Online? That's a good website that teaches different vocal parts, and like you could have them like learn the right vocal parts and practice it. But eventually, you get to a point where it's like, hey, your pitch is off, the tone is off, blah blah blah. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I would love to find another area, maybe on Troy's tech team, where you could serve, right, Troy? So, no, I don't know. You have to just have those honest conversations sooner than later. And it's not easy. And just like make sure you do it in a very kind way, and hopefully there shouldn't be too much conflict going on there. So, Diana, what gear would you suggest for going live with camera, PTZ camera? What gear list would you suggest? So, I'm not sure if I know what PTZ means. So if you want to like put another comment there, are you just talking about like a live stream camera for your worship ministry? Because I think Brady Shear, they actually just released like on their Pro Church Daily, they just did an episode about live stream stuff. So yeah, I hope that helps, Diana. And you just let me know. Oh, the point tilt zoom camera. Yeah. Okay. So I've used one of those at when I've helped out at Red Rocks and stuff. They have those things. I have no clue what the model is, so I'm sorry. I'm not a whole lot of help there. Let's see. All these guys, all these political Trump comments. I'm gonna go ahead and just make this a non-political thread over here because I just don't really. That's not. We're talking more about worship leading and ministry and stuff like that. So, let's see. Any other worship or tech ministry related questions? I think we're going on about 38 minutes here. Man, time goes by fast when we're answering all these questions. What do I think about music stands? I think if you could not use them, I would definitely not use music stands. If you guys can get to the point where you can memorize, do it, because it's gonna allow you to engage with the congregation more. I think the worst thing is when we're like, as worship leaders, our eyes are stuck down on the music stand. Even confidence monitors, like those are better than music stands, but I also try not to glue my eyes to the confidence monitor that has the lyrics in the back of the room. It's kind of the curse of confidence monitors. You sometimes get too reliant on them. So the best music stand is right here. And just play your songs until you just know them. Like, again, I mean, I guess I've been playing music for a while now, so I take it for granted. Like, I can hear a song maybe once or twice, and I know the chord progression off the top of my head. For me, it's more lyrics that are the trouble. But then for that, I just like I'll sit down, I'll look at the song, I'll talk through the lyrics, I'll think about what they mean, I'll think about the order of how they're placed in the song, and then it's memorized. So music stands, like if you have to use them, but try not to use them. Um, Francisco, how many computers do you recommend having for lyrics lighting music? So we have a Ableton Live laptop. We have a laptop that's running ProPresenter and our lighting software, and then we have a laptop that runs MainStage. So we have 3 computers right now. So I mean, I think I wouldn't want to run. I probably would at least have 2 computers to do all those things. I definitely wouldn't necessarily I wouldn't recommend putting everything on one computer because that could just be asking a lot from the computer. Rusu asked, "What's a great budget MIDI controller?" So a great budget MIDI controller, we use the M Audio Hammer 88. I believe that's what it's called. It's a full 88 weighted key controller. Honestly, if I could go back a couple months of time, I probably would have got something smaller because it's kind of big, and we're never really using those really high keys or low keys. I think I would have rather got like even maybe a semi-weighted keyboard with like a couple more like MIDI assignable buttons and stuff like that and faders. I mean, we have a really simple setup. Like we're just using MainStage, Worship Essentials for our keyboard sounds. So anyway, our keyboard controller works great, but Akai and M Audio make some great MIDI controllers that are a couple $100 each. I feel like that's budget. And Diana, we set that up ourselves. That was all. We have so Darvin's our lead pastor. I think he had the vision for like, he's a pretty creative guy, like just what the aesthetic he wanted for the stage design. Then we have another friend named Kevin who kind of helped us like order all the right pieces of equipment and stuff like that. So we just have the basic, widescreen in the background with 4 trusses on stage. And it's simple. I mean, we love it. And then the lighting and stuff like that too. Like we only have 8 LED lights, actually 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 LED lights. So 8 that are on top of the trusses, kind of facing down on the stage. And then 4 lights that we call truss warmers that kind of adjust the color. And I feel like we can get so much different aesthetic looks, especially with the widescreen in the background. So it's great for a setup teardown church. Andrew, asking about Planning Center. So Andrew, Planning Center is like, I couldn't go without it as a worship leader now. Like I've been using it for like 6 years or so. I don't know, something like that since 2010, 2011. And you can get started with it for free. So I would at the very least, I would use it as a, what was I going to say? Oh, I would use it as a way to manage your song library because that's one of the most important things that every worship leader needs to do. Have one place, preferably online, where you're storing all your charts in MP3 files. And Planning Center is free to store as many songs as you want in there, but you have to pay. You're basically paying for however many people who are part of your account. So I think it's once you get past 5 people, and maybe your team isn't even more than 5 people right now. You could, between yourself, the drummer, and maybe your guitarist or whatever, you could put them in there so then they can have access. Maybe you guys could just like create one, shared email and password for your free account and just all log into it. It'd be kind of a headache administrative wise. Also, I'm not sure if you're supposed to do that with Planning Center. It probably violates their terms of service. So don't take that advice if it does. But anyways, you could get started with it for free to manage your music. So I highly recommend that. And then from there, it expands out to being a complete church management system software solution for you guys. So not beyond just worship. They started with just worship planning services and stuff, but now they do everything. That's my like number 1 recommended church management software. Let's see. Jermaine, any pictures of my stage setup? I don't really have one handy. I feel like I just
trying to think. On my channel, I believe there's a video called "How to Set Up a Church Plant" or something like that, where I kind of walk through our whole like Sunday morning setup process. So you'll see what our stage looks like, and you'll see the setup process. Um, let's see, and I got time for a couple more questions here. I'll probably try to finish up at 15 minutes. Oh, Caesar, how do we get people to know we're in the school? Because that's where we meet for church. Facebook ads. You know, we're not in a very visible location, so we obviously have signs out there for on the streets. But for most of our visitors, the church has just been running Facebook ads. That's the even if you meet in a school, if you meet in a regular church, if you're not taking advantage of Facebook ads right now to be your way to like let people know, hey, our church exists and we're here, like totally have to do that. You know, there's a lot of ways you can kind of get strategic and complicated with Facebook ads, but even as something, I think my one tip about that is like, how can you create an ad that like adds value to your community? And so there's lots of ways to do that. Like we would run an ad. We did like on Easter, we did like a Easter party for all the little kids at the church. We did like Easter egg hunt and stuff like that. So we like promoted that event, and then people saw like, oh, there's this cool event happening for my kids, and it's happening at this church. And then those people come to the event, and then they start coming to our church. So there's ways you could be creative like that as well. Carlos, I think I don't have like much in terms of like video of our whole worship band playing, like a whole worship set. But if you go back to some previous videos on the channel here, you'll be able to see like I think there's one video I call it the #1 worship leading software, where I pretty much walk through how I use Ableton Live in a worship set, and you'll see a video of the band and a video of the software being used. But Carlos, that was a good idea though. Like maybe I should, like you said, maybe set up a couple angles around my band, and you guys can see just kind of how I have everything set up, and so I'll do that. I don't know when. June is like a crazy busy month for me, but hopefully, like when I get into like July or August, that's a thing I can do for you guys. Best ways to build your network as a person involved in worship leading as a church planter. So, Gabriel, great question. I think I know what you mean. And you can feel like you can elaborate if you want. I think networking and knowing people is your greatest asset. Like this week, our regular keyboardist couldn't make it. So like, I was just trying to think, sometimes I'm not as proactive as I need to be about finding substitutes, but like I begin to realize lately that just having a bunch of friends, especially ones who are musicians, especially ones who have played in churches, like, and know the whole worship thing, it comes in handy. So like, just reach out, like find new people to meet, whether they're other worship leaders, whether they're other musicians. Always be networking, because then when you have a need, like I had this, try to find a keyboardist this weekend. Like I had like two people I could ask. Like one person, I was literally just going through the drive-through at Chick-fil-A the other night, and I saw a guy who had played in a band before. He was like, he works at Chick-fil-A, and he's giving me my food, and he plays keyboard. I'm like, hey, you want to play keyboard this Sunday? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, awesome. I'll send you the planning center stuff. And I did. And then it turns out he couldn't do it. And I'm like, oh shoot, now I'm back to ground zero or whatever, or square one, trying to figure out what I need to, or who I can schedule. And then I remembered, oh, I have another friend who like, actually he even like helps me and works for me once in a while. And I saw him playing keys the other day. He's usually a bass player, but he's learned how to play piano, and he's good. He's a good musician. So I just asked him like, hey, come help. So that was a little bit of networking as far as like, just like finding musicians as a worship leader. And then cool. So you elaborated a little bit more. My church planning and growth class last year, our teacher said, as someone who wants to be involved in ministries of spreading the gospel of the world, it's important that you build networks, people help you find jobs and find people resources. Yeah, totally. And I think it's, if you're like a church planner, you're trying to grow it, like you have to be networking, connecting with folks in your local community, whether they're Christians or not. Like, I think you're just never going to regret knowing more people, and being connected with more people. Carlos, it's awesome to hear about the in-ear monitors that you guys implemented. I'm glad your congregation can hear the difference too, of how it like reduces stage noise and stuff. So keep up the great work. It's awesome. Well, guys, we are at 49 minutes and 47 seconds right now. So I think that's good for today's session. This is fun. I really enjoy hopping on here. It kind of makes me feel. Sometimes I'm working in my office and it's just kind of lonely. Just online work can be isolating sometimes. So it's fun to do the live stream stuff. Thanks for bearing with me as I had to go grab my coffee. This live stream was brought to you by Starbucks. Not really. Maybe someday. So let me know, guys. Email me at jake@churchfront.com if you have any more questions. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. Make sure you sign up for my free trainings, download the free worship pads. Utilize all the free resources that I got for you. So have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys next week.